你晚上你怎么都睡不着觉啊？你这我老公的表让你这么爽的啊？这他妈是做人啊！1分钟2分钟这样借的啊！1分钟2分钟他妈这样伪的男人，你跟他睡得爽的？你这做人
你能不能控制一下自己？啊！
录着你反拍的录像，你这做人啊！来，小军，你过来。
你能不能控制一下自己？
你承认吧，小军。
你先让。
有什么的？
你先让他把自己家的事情处理好。
不，我们家事情不关你事。
你跑什么？
啊？
你怕什么？
我把他送到这里来。
不是你跟你老婆说清楚，你老婆真的太爱你了，她这几天
你知道她去年是怎么跟我妈说的吗？我那会儿什么事都没有。后来我实在是看不惯她了。
你说，你对这事情说，你说出来让我知道，我他妈死哪了？
你死哪了？
你说出来。
你看老婆长得又好看，然后又很爱你。
爱不爱我当时那会儿我其实真的。
冷暴力我整整半年，和好以后。
和好以后，然后你改变了吗？
你裸聊我都给你压下来了。
你改变了吗？
你裸聊被人家犯罪团伙勒索，
你改变了吗？
还是警察局报案？你以为我没有你的照片吗？啊？我就是有人助力你，我在维护你。
你改变了吗？
我连你爸妈我都瞒。
没事，我可以回去跟他说。
你他妈发着烧，我一个晚上起来烧水钻。
好好的日子不过，非要作死，这下搞砸了吧
？This was originally a peaceful and happy marriage, but it was completely ruined by a self-destructive move. Mrs. Wong was a full-time housewife. She and her husband Mr. Fong met and fell in love during their university years. After getting married, they lived a stable and blissful life. The man worked hard on his career, while the woman took care of the family. Over the years, Mr. Fong's business flourished, but as a result, he also began to neglect his wife's emotional needs. Mrs. Wong gradually developed suspicion in her heart. She felt that now that her husband had become wealthy, he might have someone else outside. Although there was no evidence at all, she simply couldn't let it go. She poured out all these worries to her best friend Mrs. Liu. Mrs. Liu was beautiful and charming, but she had always been single due to her high standards. As the two chatted, they somehow came up with an absurd plan to test loyalty, let Mrs. Liu seduce the husband to see if he would be tempted. This idea was downright ridiculous. If you don't initiate the test, perhaps many things would never happen. But unfortunately, they insisted on writing and directing a tragedy of their own. On the day of the plan, Mrs. Wong carefully prepared a full meal to host Mrs. Liu and her husband, and she even kept encouraging her husband to drink more. After he had drunk quite a bit, Mrs. Wong found an excuse to leave the house, leaving her husband alone with Mrs. Liu. Mrs. Liu seized the opportunity to start seducing him. The husband was already a bit drunk, with weakened self-control, and in the end, he couldn't resist. The two of them actually went to a hotel and spent the night together. Mrs. Wong waited a long time without receiving any report from her best friend and began to feel uneasy. So she opened her husband's phone to check his location. The next day, in the hotel parking lot, she caught her husband and best friend red-handed. And so, the argument shown at the beginning of the video erupted. Many people have advised, never test human nature lightly, because the price of failure is something you may not be able to afford. This time, not only did Mrs. Wong suffer emotional collapse herself, but she also destroyed what was once a complete family. As for the question of whether the husband committed rape, from a legal perspective, it does not constitute such a crime. Because it was the best friend who initiated the seduction, causing the husband to mistakenly believe that she had consented. Later, the two even went to open a hotel room together. In such a situation, it shows even more clearly that this Mrs. Liu was not a good person either. She intended to steal Mrs. Wong's husband. Both parties were at fault, and this clearly cannot be considered rape. This farce ultimately led Mrs. Wong to lose her trust in her husband, lose her best friend, and perhaps even lose her marriage altogether. The saying idle days often breed trouble couldn't be more accurate. It also rings a warning bell for everyone in a marriage. Without concrete evidence, don't easily question your partner's loyalty, and certainly don't use such extreme methods to verify your relationship. One misstep, and the one who gets hurt the most, is not someone else, but yourself. And that so-called best friend might just be the real winner in all of this.
我是很少跟女性朋友交心的，因为在这个事情上我真的是吃过一个大亏，受过伤。
I've always rarely shared my inner thoughts with female friends, because I really suffered a major loss in this area and got hurt. I once had a so-called bestie, who actually seduced my boyfriend. That incident made me feel deeply disappointed in human nature. At that time, my ex and I had just broken up not long ago. I was casually scrolling through my Moments feed and saw that my ex-boyfriend and that so-called bestie had both posted photos from a trip to Lijiang. I instantly felt something was off. A woman's intuition is usually very accurate. I had a gut feeling that the two of them definitely had something shady going on. Sure enough, that bestie of mine took advantage of the breakup between me and my ex, and started checking in on him, caring for him, and even actively getting close to him. It was only then that I realized why she was so eager to pursue him. It wasn't because my ex was her type at all. It was because she already knew he had some social resources, and that was what attracted her. I had once mentioned in a conversation with her that my ex had helped someone solve a work-related problem. Then the second possibility is that I think she was acting out of a mindset like, if you had it, I want it too. Frankly speaking, it made me feel extremely disgusted, because I absolutely cannot accept any kind of relationship between my bestie and my ex-boyfriend. That crosses the bottom line of friendship for me. This experience made me deeply realize that you should not expose all your private life and connections to so-called besties, especially those you've only recently gotten to know. Now, the besties I truly confide in are all people I've known for over 10 years and deeply trust. Even with such close besties, I believe that all man-related information should be kept strictly confidential. I also realize that there is a certain type of female friend that you should absolutely never keep around. Those who are always gossiping and spreading rumors behind people's backs. These kinds of people are not only extremely idle but also petty-minded. If they can talk about others in front of you today, they can talk about you in front of others tomorrow. Mercilessly. They're often filled with negative energy and should be kept at a distance. Based on my own experience, I've summarized that if any of your current female friends exhibit the following traits, it's time to seriously clean up your social circle. First, those who like to expose your shortcomings in front of others, especially when high-quality single men are around. For example, saying, "Oh, she used to be really fat, only just recently managed to lose weight." Second, this kind of friend is always self-centered, treating you like an emotional trash can. Whenever they're in a bad mood, they call you to go shopping or eat junk food. And if you disagree with them, they'll attack you without the slightest courtesy. Third, they're always full of jealousy. For example, if you dress better than them today or your boyfriend is more outstanding than theirs, they'll say things with a sour tone like, "Men are all the same, you better be careful," pouring cold water on your happy moments without hesitation. Fourth, they will sell out your information and won't keep your secrets. For instance, if there's a guy in your mutual circle who is pursuing you, he might go and ask your bestie about you. Then your bestie would spill everything. What kind of relationships you've had, whether there are other guys currently chasing you, she'll tell him all of it. She won't consider your position at all. Now that I'm in my 30s, my social circle has become more and more streamlined. Although I have over 1,000 contacts on WeChat, those I can truly call besties and confide in, there are only a few. You have to understand that the essence of human relationships in this world is value exchange. It's either you provide me emotional value, being with you makes me happy and joyful, or there's a shared interest. We can make money together or bring each other resources. Once you understand these things, you won't feel so upset when you lose some so-called besties.
真的会有人用小号来试她老公会不会出轨。
Really, there are women who use alternate accounts to test whether their husbands would cheat, and this kind of thing truly and vividly happened right around me. My friend told me just a few days ago that she secretly used a small account to add her own husband, wanting to test whether he would take the bait. And the result? In just 3 short days, her husband completely fell. He started flirting, talking suggestively, and even made plans to meet up with her. Now she's asking me whether she should get a divorce or not. I was pretty stunned at the time, and I told her I really couldn't give her any advice on this. But as we talked, I couldn't hold it in. I ended up saying some harsh words to her. I told her, "You've always been a successful woman with your own opinions, someone rational and clear-headed. How could you do something so self-destructive? If you really think this marriage is over, you could simply get a clean break, get divorced directly. Why do you have to use such a lowly method to blow everything up? Now that you've witnessed with your own eyes your husband gradually cheating, can you really handle that psychological impact? You know exactly what kind of phrases he likes, what kind of vibe he's into, and you lured him using the exact tone he can't resist. Of course he was moved. You have to understand, a man is an animal first. You two are a married couple, and you know him so well that you know exactly how to tease him. You created a trap, and he walked right into it. Isn't that exactly what you set out to prove? You made the perfect bait yourself, so how could he not bite? Put it another way, what if your husband used a fake account to seduce you in the same way, knowing your preferences and step-by-step guiding you along, saying all the things you most wanted to hear? Do you think you wouldn't feel a thing? You think you could stay completely unaffected? That's not realistic either. Human beings are animals first, and only then are they rational people. Once the climate, temperature, and soil are all just right, it's like a seed falling into perfectly suited earth. Germination and growth are only natural. So I really want to say this to all women, don't casually mess around with so-called loyalty tests. You can be suspicious, you can have doubts, but don't go digging for landmines yourself. Especially don't go snooping into your husband's phone for no reason. As long as he brings home money and treats you like family, that's already the basic stability. Don't cross the line into those gray areas so easily. That's a minefield, it really is a minefield. If you're not ready to handle the explosion, then don't go stepping on it lightly.
拿小号去测试我老公，你们知道结果是啥吗？
I used a fake account to test my husband, and the results seriously made me question my whole life. Here's what happened. Yesterday, I created a brand new WeChat fake account, changed the profile picture to that of a stunningly beautiful woman, and then quietly added my husband as a friend. Guess what? He actually accepted the friend request very quickly. Then we started chatting and basically didn't stop the whole afternoon, and continued into the evening. He was supposed to be working, yet every message I sent was replied to almost instantly. His eagerness really left me with mixed feelings. During the conversation, I told him I was single, living in the same city, and even that we lived quite close to each other. After hearing that, it didn't take many more messages before he started hinting at whether we should meet up. You tell me, in this kind of situation, how could I not be mad? Girls, do you think what he did already counts as cheating? I honestly felt a bit mentally disoriented at that moment. To tell you the truth, right now I have no idea if he genuinely didn't recognize that it was me, or if he actually figured out it was me pretending to be a pretty woman to test him and was deliberately playing along. Or is this just what he's really like? At this point I'm really conflicted, even questioning why I ever decided to do this test in the first place. Should I keep pretending? Or should I just expose everything now? Girls, let me warn you, don't go testing your husband so lightly. You might not be able to handle the answer. But if you're willing, you could still give it a try. Maybe your husband won't fall as fast as mine did.
Many couples, in order to verify each other's loyalty, often come up with all kinds of ways to test their partner. For example, some people secretly create a fake account and approach their partner using a different identity. Others even ask their own friends or close girlfriends to deliberately try to seduce their partner. In short, they will try everything just to confirm whether the other person is 100% loyal to them. But this kind of test is actually very much like buying a glass cup. Even though the label clearly says shatterproof, you still insist on throwing it down from the second floor just to see if it breaks. If it doesn't break, you won't praise its quality, and you won't be reassured either. Instead, you'll become even more obsessed and throw it from the third floor again. If it still doesn't break, you'll keep climbing higher until one day it finally shatters. At that moment, you'll angrily say, "See, I knew it wasn't good quality." In fact, this is exactly Murphy's Law. The moment you decide to test, the tragedy has already begun to quietly unfold. Because no relationship can forever withstand endless suspicion and repeated tests. So what do you think about this kind of method of trading a test for peace of mind? Do you think it's smart, or is it self-sabotaging happiness? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. I truly want to know what you think. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.